What is the biggest misconception about the rural education?
Biggest misconception about small schools is there's not opportunities available. That's completely false.
What was an experience like growing up and being in a smaller school district like that?
It was very community oriented.
Social studies,
Yeah.
history,
Yes.
is kind of your passion. Why history?
I like the idea of finding out about the micro-history, the individuals. We all talk about George Washington. Everybody knows about George Washington, but what about the people who worked on his plantation?
What does the school district mean?
The school district is the future of the community, not the teachers, not the building, but the kids.
We're in Chamberlain, South Dakota. My guest today is Dr. Justin Zajic, the superintendent of Chamberlain Schools. You grew up in a small town.
I did, yeah. Canby, Minnesota is where I graduated high school. We had 83 kids in our class.
In your graduating class, 83?
Yep.
So, and that was 2003?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you know you wanted to be in education even at that point?
Towards the end of my high school career, I experienced a few teachers, administrators that were influential, and I knew I wanted to dive into education, not necessarily as a teacher, but as a principal, because of the influence that Dr. Bob Slava had on me. And the vehicle to do that was being a teacher first. And so I jumped into that, and I thoroughly enjoyed teaching. Then when I had the opportunity, did jump into the principalship.
Yeah, and you did, like in Canby, in high school, you did football, you did wrestling, you did track. Just what was an experience like growing up and being in a smaller school district like that?
Yeah, so it was very community oriented. You know, as a seventh grader, because they're the high school 7 through 12, you walk the halls and you know the seniors. You can talk with the seniors. Sometimes they ignored you, but you knew who they were. They knew who you were. In football, you were kind of separated from them. You know, the JV and varsity was over here. But for us, for wrestling in Canby, your 7th through 12th graders are in the same room. So as a 7th grader, you're wrestling the seniors that are your size. You're working to get better. You're learning from them. And same with track. It was a smaller program. We ran on a gravel track. And so you were learning from those guys how to, jump better, how to run faster, how to start through the blocks. And it was very much kids teaching each other a community feel.
Well, that's what I loved about being in a small school growing up too, was that I got to be in 3 different sports, and now I was better at some than others. But and not only that, but be on student council, be in the band, National Honor Society, and just being able to be involved in a lot of different things. I look back and feel like that was such a helpful thing for my development.
Yeah, definitely. When you're from a small town, and we see it here in Chamberlain, the kids are involved in everything in the school or the community schedules so that they can be. It's not, okay, we've got football at 3:30, but there's also band practice and play practice at 3:30, so you have to pick. It's going all night. It's the kids are working through their schedule, trying to get everything fit in that they want to do, and everybody accommodates for that.
I did football until 9th grade, and then after 9th grade, I remember we had a couple kids that were getting recruited Division I, and I was like, wait a second, I have to go up and practice against those guys. They're a lot bigger, they're a lot stronger. And that's when I made the decision. I'm like, you know what, I'll focus in on basketball, baseball, but then got to do cross country. I had no formal cross country background, but then was able to, even as a high school senior, to be able to go out for something like that. But you can do that in a small town.
Yeah, they openly accept you. They make the transition. They work with you where you're at. It's building a team.
So you graduate from Canby, you go to college, Southwest Minnesota State? Is that right?
Yeah. I started out in a college in Nebraska for a couple years, and then ended up transferring to Southwest Minnesota State in Marshall. Go Mustangs. Graduated in 2007, December 2007, and then sent out 36 job applications. Social studies teacher, right? So we're a dime a dozen sometimes, and ended up in Mitchell, South Dakota to start my career.
Yeah. Social studies, history, is kind of your passion. Why history? What was it about history?
I like the idea of finding out about the micro history, the individuals. We all talk about George Washington. Everybody knows about George Washington, but what about the people who worked on his plantation? You know, you go to Mount Vernon and you visit the plantation, you see, okay, here's where he sat, but then you go and see the slave quarters and all the gardens that the workers did and the things that they built. I really appreciate the micro history and how that all plays into the bigger picture, because it's never just one guy or girl, it's everybody that contributes to that. And you kind of miss those in your traditional history class. You skip over those. You say, okay, here's your, Abraham Lincoln, here's everything he did. Well, what built Abraham Lincoln? Who helped him? So that's really why I like history, is the other things about it.
Well, and I love history too, and I love exploring the storytelling part of history. Mm-hmm. What I'm really fascinated in is like, our brains can only remember so much. So you say George Washington, and most people are going to go, oh, okay, the first president, was there a cherry tree? Was that him? People are going to do that. Right. They're going to go, the crossing the Delaware. But there's so much there where, like, George Washington, for instance, his father dies, right, when he's really young. His older brother really kind of helps him along. He meets this family that really helps him become sort of who he is. Yep. And we all hear the end story with him in terms of the successes, but there were so many failures along the way. I mean, even early on in his 20s, there were a couple battles where he blew it.
Yep.
But I mean, also too, there's so much learning in that too, where it's like not everyone's life is so necessarily easy, but we all have those, failures that we have to overcome.
Right. And we tend to highlight the easy parts and the successes and ignore the failures. And so everybody goes, oh, I'm never going to be successful because I've got all these failures. Well, nobody talks about those, so nobody focuses on them. That's important to focus on because everybody fails at some point.
Yeah, right. Like on my LinkedIn, I don't put on, hey, 500 different TV stations said no to be, right? I put on the 8 that chose me along the way, right? I'm sure the same for you. But so your career, then you graduate, you're in Mitchell. Did you have to apply to a lot of different places before you?
Yeah. So as we started to end, because I did long-term subbing in Minnesota, Montevideo, Minnesota, in the spring of 2008. And as we're getting down to the end of the school year, I'm sending out 36 applications across Minnesota, South Dakota. I got one interview, one, and that was in Mitchell. And so I had never been west of Sioux Falls before. I always go south. I've got ties in Nebraska, Minnesota. And so I was talking to my wife. We got married in 2007, summer of 2007. And so we were talking like, well, this is the one interview. What if they ask me to move there? And she's like, well, I'm up for an adventure. And sure enough, drove there for the interview. I was driving back and was right at about Hartford. And the principal called and said, hey, we want to hire you. And I'm like, yes, I'll accept. What's next? Which in hindsight is like, as somebody who now hires people, I've never had anybody go yes right away. So I must have been pretty excited.
Yeah.
So we ended up moving in July of 2008 and started in my formal educational career in that August.
How long before you did the Corn Palace?
I think it was like 3 weeks.
Okay. Yeah. Mitchell known to be the Corn Palace, and they've got that beautiful structure there. How has that changed, though? So you applied to 36 different spots to get a social studies position as a teacher. That's 2008.
Right.
What's it like now hiring as a superintendent, and how has that shifted where you're really having to, at least in Minnesota, I know you're really having to recruit people and to find teachers.
Yeah. So that has definitely changed. You started out when I ended up becoming principal over in Mitchell for 6 years. And so the first couple of years, it's 20, 30 applications for a position. And then right about 2018, it really starts to dive. And you see 6 applications, you see 3. So now here in Chamberlain, we have a phenomenal school. We have great benefits, great salary. We get 2 or 3 applications per position, which is, that makes it difficult to fill. And so we're working some creative angles on how to make sure we've got the right person in front of the kids and we're not just hiring the first applicant that we find.
And that's not just a rural thing, though. I mean,
No,
it's it's a career thing where teachers are hard to find. Do you know why or how? What has shifted from '08 to 2025?
That's a really good question. If I knew, I would solve it right away. I think part of it is public perception of we don't pay teachers well enough. And in South Dakota, we're actually working to fix that. In 2016, they passed legislation that bumped us way up in pay. And they did something similar again last year. So we're slowly moving up in pay. Our retirement here is great. It's actually better than a lot of the states around us for teachers. There's so many other career choices that people can go into. Science is one that's really hard to fill. Well, you can come teach science, or you can go work for Monsanto and make a lot more money in the private sector. So it's more a matter of choice. There's a book, I forget who it's written by now. Somebody who works for the Minnesota Vikings. But the premise of the book is people, or the new generation, doesn't want the 9 to 5, they want the flexibility. Well, in teaching, if you're not here, we still have the kids, so that flexibility doesn't exist. And so as an educational institution, how do we cater to that new generation of teachers while still teaching the kids? There's going to be a lot of things that are going to have to change in education if we want to do this right.
Well, and my sister's a teacher, and so I have such a love for teachers and coaches, and the way that I still talk to my favorite teachers and coaches, the ones who impacted me in so many different ways, and I know I'm not alone in that. But we ask a lot of teachers too. And it's just they're getting asked to do, I think, a lot.
Yep.
It's a challenging position as well, because you're dealing with parents.
Yep.
You're dealing with a lot of different kids and personalities, a changing education system, and so it is. It is a challenging profession too, I suppose.
It is. It's challenging, and I will say, kids are rarely the issue in teaching. They're flexible. They're willing to work with you. You show them respect, they will in turn show you respect. You build that positive rapport. The perception that people that aren't in the walls have is a lot different than what actually happens, and that permeates throughout, and then people go, oh, I don't want to have to put up with that in my profession. And unless you have somebody that's influential in your education, you're probably not going to pick teaching as a career. You walk around and ask any of our teachers, most of them had, I really loved my third grade teacher, that's why I do elementary. Well, I really loved my senior economics teacher. That's what I wanted to do. I really loved my principal. I became a principal. You have that influence on those kids.
Mm-hmm. So 2008, you're in Mitchell. You start, and you're teaching there, but you get your master's, right?
Yeah. So I had an opportunity as soon as I got to Mitchell, and we were doing the pre-service. We were in the department meeting with the history department, and the superintendent, Dr. Graves, walks in, and he was talking to one of the other ones about this grant that they were doing. And the other gal, Kate was her name, she goes, well, we have one spot left. Let's have Justin apply. And I'm like I don't have money to take my master's right now. And Dr. Graves goes, it's free. You'll want to get on this. And so I applied to get my master's in American history, teaching American history from USD. Which was a lot of fun because it was classroom learning, but then every year we took field trips. So we did 21 days on the East Coast, visiting the battle sites, visiting New York, visiting DC, got to see things that I would never have gotten to see otherwise. Jamestown, I actually got to talk to the main, what is he called? The guy that excavates. I forget what they're called right now, but the main guy at the Jamestown excavation site. Got to talk to him and talk about his work and how it's changed over the years. And then I was like, well, here's how I'm going to use this in my classroom. So it's very much that one-on-one. We went on 2 of those trips to the East Coast, so like 42 days total. And then we went to Nebraska. They did a Western South Dakota trip. And so that was a lot of fun. Got my master's through there. And then towards the end of that, I actually started pursuing my specialist in administration so that I could become a principal.
And the goal was always to be a principal.
Yes. Yep.
Right.
Always had the desire to be a principal, lead a school. That way I could work with the kids and like happened to me, help them through some challenging times.
So now you've got the classic education, prepared you to be a principal. You became a principal in Mitchell?
Yeah, well, not right afterward. I actually, in 2012, I was approached by the Dakota Wesleyan University in Mitchell. I was already adjuncting for them. They wanted me to apply for a full-time professor position. And I did that and ended up getting that. So for 2 years, I was a full-time professor at Dakota Wesleyan, which was a lot of fun. But they made the mistake of giving me some administrative roles, and I got a taste for really what that's like, and I helped lead or guide DW through a few different initiatives. And in 2014, the role of assistant principal at the Mitchell Middle School opened up, and so I talked it over with my wife and applied for that, ended up getting that, and a week later, I was called into the superintendent's office, and he said, our principal's resigning. Do you want that instead? Of course I want that instead, right? So ended up being the principal of that and was there for 6 years as principal.
And then 2020 happens, and I don't even mean COVID,
Yeah.
but that's going to be a part of this story.
Yeah.
But 2020 happens, and it was probably leading up to that, but you had somebody in your corner saying like, hey, you should really look at being a superintendent, which was never your intention. Like you were like, I'm going to either be in the classroom, I'm going to be a principal.
Yep.
But what was it about superintendent that you didn't want to be or do?
The further you go up in administration, the less interaction you have with the kids. And that's why we get into education. You want to work with the kids. You want to help them through that maturation process and watch them grow, make the decisions, guide them, make better decisions, right? You can't necessarily do that from the superintendent's role. So after my first year in Mitchell as principal, I got an email from my superintendent, and it just had a headline, just a subject. He's very notorious for just putting something in the subject line, nothing in the body. It says, come to my office now. And his office is, 40 feet down the hall from my office. So I'm walking to his office like this, just kind of hanging my head like I'm in trouble. And he shuts both of his doors.
Had you done something? Did you think?
I like to walk the gray area sometimes.
Okay.
And so maybe I had done something, I don't know. But it shut both of his doors and he goes, this isn't a conversation I want to have. I'm like, oh, okay. He said, there's an opening for superintendent in Madison and down by Sioux City, Dakota Valley. You need to apply. I said, no, I'm not interested in superintendency. I like being a principal. He goes, yep, and you're very good at what you do, but your big picture, you need to go and you need to put your foot in this ring so that you can have a bigger impact on education in South Dakota. So I went home and I talked it over with my wife. And her response was great. She says, I didn't marry the job, I married you. So if that's what you want to do, yeah. So I applied for both of those. Didn't get an interview, which was expected. The applications were turned in the day they were due. I have a year and a half of principal experience. No big town is going to hire that guy for superintendent.
Is that how it typically goes? Like can you be on a superintendent track without the principal track, or does a principal usually go to superintendent?
Principal usually goes to superintendent. You can, because a lot of it's business, but if you miss that education piece as superintendent, you're missing a lot of what goes on in a school. So it's more ideal to have the teacher to principal to superintendent track, because then what goes on throughout the school. And
you had all the education piece of it too with the administration part,
yep.
right? Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So you're applying and you're prepared in a sense, like you have the education, you now have the experience,
right.
But you didn't get those two jobs, but right. Did it like kind of plant a seed in you?
It did. It definitely planted a seed, and it got my mind thinking like, okay, I can have an impact, because we did some really great things in the middle school in Mitchell that made news across the nation. It was fun. And I'm sitting there going, I could do this with a whole district. So as the years pass, very selective on where we apply. My wife and I decide to apply because, we're from Canby, Minnesota, and we don't want to get too far away because we do like to go home. And so I did end up applying at Milbank and Canby, of all places, and then Fort Pierre. And none of those really had a nice, they didn't feel right? Mm-hmm. And when you're interviewing, especially for this type of position, it goes both ways. I want to get to know the town. the town wants to get to know me.
I mean, you have a family. Like, you're going to raise your family in this town, right?
Exactly.
It's not just, I'm going to come in and do a job. You're going to be a public figure in this community. So, so then 2020 hits.
December of 2020, I get one of those emails from my superintendent again, Dr. Graves. It's come to my office. Okay. And by this time, I'm like, I probably did do something wrong, right? Been here 6 years and I've made enough mistakes. And he goes, hey, the Chamberlain Superintendency is going to open up in a few weeks. It's a great place to start your superintendent position. I encourage you to apply. I go, I've been deer hunting in Chamberlain. I kind of know the town. Like, I don't know much about the school. So talk it over with my wife again. And she goes, why not? You know, you've been trying to get a superintendent position for 4 or 5 years. Just, you don't have to say yes. Put your name in. We'll see what happens. So I apply. And the superintendent interviews are unique because you do a pre-interview with the consulting firm, and then you do an interview that day. So I ended up getting the interview with the board. You interview with community, with teachers, with the school board, right? So the week before the interview, which the interview was February 21st. 2020, right? The week before, my wife and 3 kids and I drive over here, and we're driving around the town and we're looking, and we're going, okay, this is pretty nice. We stopped at the Lakota Museum, talked to some people, drove around, looked at the schools, and went, okay, that's kind of a nice town. We can see ourselves here. So fast forward to that Monday night, I come over here and I do the interviews, and I thought they went pretty well, but at the same time, I'm like, I see I'm up against 3 other people. They have superintendent experience. They know what they're doing. I told my wife, I don't think there's any chance. And so my phone rings it was like 7 at night from the guy who runs the search firm. And he goes, hey, really want you to know they discussed for a short amount of time. They want you. And I'm kind of like, but what? It's like, yeah, they want to hire you. Okay. And Tom, the guy's name, goes, what's your decision? You know, we talked about this. You decide tonight. Like, I need 10 minutes to talk it over with my wife. So hung up the phone, talked it over with my wife, and she goes, why are we talking? This is what you've wanted. We've talked about it. Let's jump in. Okay. She's very supportive through all this. And so we accept that night, and this is when things really start to pick up pace, right? We accept that night. We put our house on the market like a week later. It sells within 2 days. We are over in Chamberlain. We've put an offer in the house the next week. So within 3 weeks, we've tentatively sold our house, bought a house. March 13th, COVID shut down every single school district in South Dakota. And I went, oh no. So now I have to pack a house, figure out how to run a middle school virtually, and then figure out how to do an entire district virtually. So it was a stressful first year.
Yeah. But even the process was so fast. Mm-hmm. Let me take one step back, because I don't want to just move right past, but you must have had a wonderful mentor in Mitchell who kept encouraging you and saying, hey, I think you need to think bigger. Mm-hmm. I think you can have a larger impact in education here in South Dakota in a different way, and kept encouraging you to apply for superintendent jobs, even knowing that he's going to lose you.
Right. I actually asked him flat out the first time. I said, is this your way to fire me without firing me? And he laughed, and then he got mad at me for saying that. He goes, no, I hate to lose you, but you can have such a bigger impact on education if you take this next step. And, you know, you took a tour of this elementary. This is what we can do if we use educational research theory. This building was designed around best practice in education. And you're not going to be able to do that everywhere. You know, one of the reasons we were able to do this is the school board I work with said, you are the expert. We want you to do this the best way you know how. And they really have been, well, the school board all 5 years has been supportive of everything and really allowed this place, this school, this community to take off. And we have a centerpiece right here in the middle of South Dakota of our school is a model school now for places across the state, and not just the actual building. The changes we've made in the curriculum and how we run our reading programs, we have schools across the state coming and observing, we've made national publications on what we do here and how it's had an impact. We have a demographic that is, our students come from families of low socioeconomic incomes. Our gains in reading and math rival towns we have no business keeping up with because of what we're able to do here.
So you're making that impact.
Yes.
And that's pretty incredible. So from 2020 to 2025, you've seen not only the academic growth, but you've seen growth in space.
Yep.
I guess just what does this school and any, not just this school, the middle school and the high school, the school district, what does it mean to this community? And it being a smaller community, a small town, what does the school district mean? Right.
The school district is the future of the community, and not just not the teachers, not the building, but the kids. We took a tour of the building. I showed you our STEM lab, our CTE lab. The intent in that lab is to get kids interested in electrical engineering, in architect, in plumbing, in the hands-on jobs that we need in this community, right? So we have a farming-based community. We can learn the skills in that room that'll fix the John Deere tractors that are all electronic now. It's building a workforce for our community. So in 10, 15 years, when these kids have graduated that have had these STEM classes from junior kindergarten, that have been learning these skills all the way through, you're really going to see the impact and the community go, wow, look what we're able to do because we supported this 15 years ago.
You've worked in a lot of smaller school districts. You come from a small town. What is the biggest misconception about the rural education?
Biggest misconception about small schools is there's not opportunities available, right? That's completely false, right? Especially with the advent of technology. You rewind 30 years or 25 years, actually, my 25th high school.
Yeah, you're getting old, man.
Yeah, I'm getting old. Graduated almost 25 years ago, 2003. We had kids taking dual credit classes. They would have to drive 30 miles to Marshall and 30 miles back, or it would be correspondence via mail, right? So they'd do the assignment, they'd mail it in. Most of our juniors and seniors take college classes. We offer any class that is available through the reagent schools for high schoolers, we offer here. We have sign language, we have Spanish, we have STEM classes that they have at maybe a half dozen other schools across the state. We can prepare kids to go into tech school. We can prepare them to go into four-year universities. We have award-winning bands. We have award-winning marching bands. We have a theater complex. If you want to do it, we have it available here. And we have the opportunities. Like we said earlier, you can go from football to cross country, and you can be a contributing team member. You can't do that in these large schools. We don't specialize in one thing. We allow our kids to specialize in whatever they want. And if it's multiple things, great.
Yeah. This is such a special community. You're around students each and every day, and there is this misconception that kids at 18, they just want to leave and they never want to look back, right? Now, there is data that supports at 18, kids move away, right? They go to college oftentimes. They go to a trade school. They go and start their life. But they also then, the data supports this, that at 30, they start going, wow, there's so much at home that I love. And there's so much here that Chamberlain and Oacoma have to offer to this region in terms of job, housing, workplace, quality of life. When you're around students here, you're seeing students graduate every single year. Do they want to come back here?
I think a lot of them do. They talk about, we've got kids going to school, Oklahoma, Wyoming, Montana. They're getting a degree to come back here and continue what they've always wanted to do. It's a lot of our teachers are from here. It's very much that community pull that you feel to come back, closer to family. What everything has to offer. What's available. And it's the greatest thing about, one of the greatest things is, everybody in your class, right? I know all 83 kids that were in my graduating high school class. my kids know all of the kids in their class. You're not going to get that at a large school. You're going to walk around going, I have no idea who you are or you are, and the teachers know you, right? If I go back home and I'm walking through the grocery store, if I see a teacher I used to have, they remember who I am.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen at your large schools. That's the impact that the education in a small school has. It's that rapport, it's that lifelong rapport, and they ask how you're doing, where are you at now, and they're genuinely interested.
Totally. You have that cheerleader for life.
Yes.
That is excited about the impact that you have. Mm-hmm. No, I feel that too, even in my hometown, and I think that's one thing that really makes small towns special. Justin, thank you so much for taking time and sharing your thoughts and your experience here.
Yeah, not a problem. Thank you for coming to Chamberlain.